Welcome to MindShifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rachma. Michael is the author of So Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce.
To the brightness within you and the truth that is rooted within me.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the show, MindShifters Radio. We're delighted to be here to support you. I don't know if Jeanie is having some technical difficulties or if the chat room is up, but we'll hope that it will be up in a moment or so. Are you with us, Jeanie? Well, life on the road, what can we say? But we're here to... I can hear you loud and clear, Dr. Tim. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. I was just helping you test out, letting you know I can hear you, and apparently she has the switchboard up to put me on.
Yes, cool. All right, well, that's half the game, isn't it? How are you this morning, sir?
I'm doing beautifully. We had
this afternoon.
We had a MindShifters group last night, and I think only a one-word descriptor is valid, and that would be wow.
Tell us about it.
Well, just another very willing, very honest person who is relatively new to the worksheet process and decided to do a worksheet on a major life issue, someone in her family dying in hospice, and all of the sadness and fear she has around that event. And when she identified all of the parts of the worksheet and her goal for that person to be healthy and happy, and canceled all of that and asked for help to be shown how she was creating all the fear and sadness, she was shown an image from about 40 years ago. And around the time of Vietnam. And someone in her family who went away to Vietnam and died. And the shattering of the family back then. And the powerful connection between the events today that she fears is going to shatter the family and tear everything apart, and her ability to see that's just stirring up all of the old judgments and emotions that she hasn't dismantled from 40 years ago when the family was, in her words, quote, shattered by this loss. Just really provided a powerful space for her to do some healing and cry some tears. And at the end, as you know, in the process, in the context of a group, that just opens the space for other people. There were two other people who were doing worksheets. One was starting one on her brother, and another one switched over in the middle to a worksheet on her brother because of the energy that got stirred up in the room. And it was just a powerful opening for people to heal judgments and negative emotions that they're holding about past events. Wow.
I certainly hear that loud and clear. Not sure what's happening with the feedback in the background. Can you hear it there?
Yes, it's an echo.
I'll tell you what, it's both of us. So what I'm going to do is let's hold that thought and continue the conversation, but I'm going to hang up and call back in if you want to do the same. Let's see if we can get rid of that. I'll call right back. You folks can hold. Okay, so we're back, and Jeanie, can you hear me? Are you there, sweetie? I think you opened your phone, Jeanie, but I can't hear you. Hello, who's there? What's happening here? Okay, well, let's just move into talking about what Dr. Tim was sharing. And number one, the power of working together with people, even if it's just one other person, to open the space for healing. If you don't have a support group in your area, start one. If you don't have a support group in your family, start one. And watch how awesomely powerful the space becomes for healing. Jeanie, maybe you could mute everybody else on the line because we're getting that feedback again, and I don't think it's from my phone. It might be from another open phone. So maybe if we could just mute everybody and see how that fits. So, okay, that seems to have done it. Whatever phone just muted, that's the one that was creating the challenge, I think. But anyway, technology is so much fun. But Dr. Tim, as you share that, and this woman going back 40 years in her memory and seeing that that's the dynamic that she's carried for 40 years that brings this whole reality of shattering the family once again forward. And the beauty and the power of that kind of a worksheet is that she'll be the one who'll hold the space for the family. She'll be able, instead of coming to that event of someone passing, which is an awesome time and an awesome event, instead of shattering and destroying the family with the mind energy from the past and the generational issues around someone passing, she'll be the space of love and connectedness for the healing of the family, and that's just so powerful. I remember working with a woman in South Florida back, she was in her 60s. This goes back about 25 years ago. She was in her 60s, and in her family system, the word death was not allowed. Just, you don't speak it. And her father was in his 90s and ill and getting ready to pass. She worked through the trauma she had from childhood about speaking about death in her family home, and went home and spoke to both her mother and her father, who were in their 90s, about her father's impending death. And there was this emotional explosion beyond explosions. And she just held the space, was able to process through that. And out of that explosion, here's a woman that, she was, I don't remember her exactly, 62 or 63 years of age. Out of that explosion around the conversation about death, she heard her father for the first time in her life say the words, "I love you." First time in her life. Out of her courage to hold the space for the conversation about death. And that led to an opening in her family where she, her children, and her mother were able to be in a circle around her father's bed when he passed. And she said it was one of the most beautiful, loving, wonderful family events that they had ever experienced. And because she was willing to clean out the trauma around death, the generational issue of her father leaving, her sharing with me was that she had a better relationship with her father after he passed than she ever did while he was alive. And we can go in and clean these things up, for at this stage in our insanity, death seems to be an inevitable process. And if we bring pain and trauma to it, then we'll create painful, traumatic situations. When we bring human life to it, when we are able to function as these awesome human beings that we are, we bring a space of peace. We bring a space of healing. We bring a powerful presence that creates healing for everyone involved. And, of course, we kind of didn't go into the introduction of our project of inviting you to be part of the team that changed the world, but this is a very powerful example of someone choosing to join that team, to be part of the team that changed the world. That woman's work will change millions of lives on this planet over time, because the energy of her healing, that space in her, reaches out to all humanity. And when we can get enough people who will pass through that, that's what's going to put an end to war and create a space safe enough for human life to show up. The invitation we have for you is to be part of that team, and the way you do that is each day you make a choice, and the choice is, if I approach an event in some form of hostility or fear, then I'm willing to engage in the forgiveness process, return my mind to the point at which the original hostility or fear occurred, and that happens automatically. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to lay on the couch for 25 years to do it. When you know how to forgive, that happens automatically, as happened with this woman. When the space is safe and she has the ability to access those memories, they'll come forward. It is not absolutely required that that happen, but oftentimes it will. And so we invite you every day to join the team that changed the world, to be one who says, if I have hostility or fear, I'm going to change it. I'm going to let go of it. And I call that reconversion. Actually, I was thinking about opening the show today with the word conversion. And then I realized that we've already been converted, and you know, the non-being world has a cheap copy of everything real in the spiritual dimension. And so the non-being world's cheap copy of conversion is, I want you to come into my church. I want to convert you. But in fact, if you think about it, think about human life. Hold a newborn child, and you know what the awesome active presence of love is. The world goes about converting that child from a love-based creature with a love-based mind into an hostility and fear-based creature with an hostility and fear-based mind. And forevermore, once that conversion takes place, unless one is reconverted, they will see everything, every event, as the terror and trauma that was instilled in them as children. Instead of experiencing each event in our lives as this awesome active presence of love, bringing us an opportunity to heal, if there's something to heal, bringing us an opportunity to express our human life. So this work, in essence, is about reconverting you. If you live in a hostility, fear-based world, and if an event happens and you say, and that event really scares me, know that you're lying to yourself. That event is just an event. There's no fear in that event. The fear is inside of you, and you have been converted. And sadly, we live in a world where virtually every authority structure in the world is about converting us from love-based creatures to fear and hostility-based creatures. In some of the most unlikely, and you would think unseemly places, business. Notice how much business motivation is about fear. Notice how much government motivation is about fear. Oh, the threat level is orange today. Keep the peons in a fear-based mind. Keep them from their human lives. The churches, how many churches, their whole foundation, in order to join, you got to buy into a fear-based mind. And oftentimes in the name of one who said, I come to bring you life and bring it more abundantly. Become as a little child, for such is the kingdom of heaven. So here's a man who's attempting to convert his world into being love-based beings again. And those who come along with their fear-based minds, their hostility-based minds, convert his teaching into something that terrorizes and traumatizes people and has people buying identities that aren't true. And so one who buys that looks out into the world and thinks the world is the problem. The problem isn't out there, folks. Death is not a problem. Death is not a trauma. Disease is not a trauma. Disease is a result of having been converted into a fear and hostility-based mind. When we're willing to do our work, and the work is primarily the work of forgiveness. We have a whole series of tools, but the primary work that we're about doing is the work of forgiveness, which has nothing to do with, I have trauma going on inside of me, so I'll forgive you because you caused it. That's a fraud. It's a lie that keeps us locked into this fear and hostility-based mind. And when we filter everything through that fear and hostility-based mind, we've broken the very first law that Yeshua brought to us. What he said was, first order of business is you keep a condition in your mind called love. You keep plugged into your source. You are a love-based being. You are designed to function as a love-based being. Now, those who have only hostility and fear-based minds who look at him can't comprehend that, have no clue what he's talking about, and so they promulgate their hostility, their fear, their rage, their guilt, and their pain. I'll never forget sitting in the church one day and watching this little kid sitting in front of us. He was probably about 13, 14. And the preacher's up there just wailing up a storm, just raging on. And you could just see this kid shrinking. And intuitively, I could feel him standing in front of his father as his father raged. And here's his attraction to go to church, to hear more raging in his face, to replicate his power person dynamic, his raging father. And with no tools, supposedly in a church based in the teachings of Yeshua, with no tools to heal that, he sits being terrorized on deeper and deeper levels around with the rest of the congregation, who go, well, this is good preaching, isn't it? Excuse me. Allow yourself to be reconverted. Give up that whole hostility and fear-based experience that's inside of you, that's been in your generations for too long. Come home. Come home. You are the awesome, active presence of love. How do you come home? You forgive everything in your fear and hostility-based mind, and then you experience a conversion. Be transformed by the renewal of your mind, Paul said. Now, that's not some kind of a mamby-pamby religious idea. You have work to do if you want to experience that. You have to tap into your essence. You have to forgive everything in you that is unlike love to come back to that. And it's not going to be Dr. Feelgood. It's going to feel like, it's going to look like hell, because it is hell. Once you recognize that, then you remember who you are. I am a love-based being. What in me interprets this experience as terror and trauma and pain? Now, the first time, the second time, the 10th time, the 100th time, the 1000th time you have that insight and you have that piece of work to do, it's going to feel like hell. And the 10,000th time, because it is the hell that's stored inside of your generations, inside of your genes, inside of your cells. But if you have a commitment to follow what the man said, he said, first order of business is have love in your mind. Have this link, this connection, this plug-in to love. And stop believing in the rest. Now, if you don't do that, don't tell me that you have a relationship or you believe in God, because you don't. God is love. First order of business. Keep your connection. Keep your link to that. And let yourself gently process out everything that never belonged. As someone I was doing some process with this morning said, and sometimes it's hard to remember that the objective was to drain the swamp when you're up to your butt in alligators. Yeah, it can catch our attention. It can lock us into something that we're not. If you don't know how to do that forgiveness process, we invite you to go to our website, www.whyagain.com, soon to become whyagain.org. You can check out whyagain.org. That's in process. But whyagain.com, and on the right-hand side, there's a link that says download worksheets. On the new site, whyagain.org, that link is going to move up toward the top. But the first 7 links under that, and, you know, if the world that has converted you to hostility and fear keeps you so busy that you don't have time to do this, recognize that busyness is your drug, and you've got work to do. Go to whyagain.com, first 7 links. It'll give you the worksheet. It'll give you new chapter 24 from my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And the first 5 links are radio shows where we walk somebody through the whole forgiveness process. Now, the Don being mind, part of its game, in order not to do its work, will say, oh, no, this is too complicated. I can't do this. The process is as simple as A, B, C. Just look at each step in the worksheet. It's totally, completely self-explanatory, A, B, C. But if you bring a confused, hostility and fear-based mind to the worksheet, like everything else, is going to look like a mountain you can't climb. you can climb it. There are 5 radio shows that walk people through each step of the worksheet. And as you do that, the reason we're here, our commitment to you is to support you in that healing process. So pick up the phone, call us, 646-200-4169, and let us know how we can support you. We're here to support your conversion. No, not into somebody's church, not into our church or Charlie's church or Mary's church. We're here to support you being converted back to its reconversion, back to a human, love-based mind so that your physiology can't produce anything else. It's a long journey if you've been converted to hostility or fear back to the love-based mind. You will need much, much support for going there. At times it will seem like you are alone, and it is a strange feeling, this walking alone. You will stand at the edge of the abyss of the insanity of your bloodline and of your culture, and you will walk over the other side of that abyss into your true human beingness. Come home. That's what this work is about. So, Jeanie, do we have any callers? Anything happening in the chat room? Are you with us, Jeanie? Oh, no.
Are you there, Michael?
I am. I thought I'd lost everybody.
No,
that was my oh no.
No, you were here. I heard that wonderful intro and invitation, and the echo is gone.
Yes, it is.
So maybe Jeanie discovered it was her phone doing the echoing.
Could be. It sounded like it might have been, and so
are you two in different cities again?
We are. We're still. She's in Bristol, Tennessee. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. So I think I just heard Jeanie's phone come online. Are you there, sweetie? No, doesn't sound like it. And if it is your phone, sweetie, you're not coming through. So if there's somebody who's on the line with a question, a thought, an answer, why don't you go ahead and just open their line? And if you had your hand up in the chat room, go ahead and say hello, and let's see if we can find out where you're calling from and who you are. Is there anybody there in the chat room with us? Okay, I'm going to presume not. I'm going to presume that Jeanie's having problems with her phone. So, Dr. Tim, any thoughts on what I just had to say? How does that sit for you? What does that trigger for you?
Well, I think the idea of busyness being a drug is a real important one. I think one of the best quotes I've heard in a long time that are outside the spiritual realm but nudging up into it is, it's really important to schedule your priorities. It's far more important than prioritizing your schedule.
Yes.
And if you understand that choosing a life that's more loving and peaceful and nurturing and accepting of yourself and others is a top priority, then it's really important to schedule time to make that happen. That's not what this world that we were born into conditions us to. It's not what this world is, the economic and political and community organization world is built on, but it is possible to create that space of love within myself by removing all of the garbage, all of the scheduled activities that lead to more need to, one of the ways Guy Finley talks about this is to say, we're conditioned that we need this, the list is 30 or 40 items long, in order to feel safe, in order to feel whole, in order to feel secure. And it's a trap, because then as soon as we accumulate those things on our list that we think we needed to feel safe and whole and secure, now we're fearful that we might lose them.
Yeah.
So how
and the question comes, is that all there is?
Right. And so how could the thing that's supposed to liberate us end up liberating us if now we're a slave to it? And now I can't do this and I can't do that because I'm afraid I'm going to lose the thing that finally brought me some modicum of peace. So it is possible, although, we say in this work we really don't want people to believe us. We want them to try it out for themselves and find out for themselves. But it is possible to clear the junk away and discover that there is that source of peace and calm and love and joy within each of us. And that's the goal of the work. Not creating peace and joy and love, but dismantling the anger and fear and bitterness and resentment and the conclusions that I need to possess this or control that. So that's what was resonating for me as you were talking.
Cool. And, of course, one of the things, the way that, because the mind is so powerful, it's such an iron trap in its game of denial, you can deny that stuff and blame somebody else for it. How do you tell if there's some anger, fear, hatred, vengeance, grief, or pain for you to dismantle? Here's how you tell. Are you capable of producing in your physiology anger, fear, hatred, vengeance, or pain? Now, the non-being mind will say, yeah, but I'm only experiencing it because of this. I'm only experiencing it because that happened. I'm only experiencing it because he did this. I only experience it because my spouse did this, because my child did that, because the economy's doing this. No. You're only experiencing what you're experiencing if it is unlike your human life love, because it's in you. Your mind will take and project it onto anything or anybody that's handy. You can take the most cherished, loved person in your life, and if nobody else is handy, it'll be all their fault you're experiencing what you're experiencing. Stop your denial. Stop the lies. You're experiencing it because it's within you. Own that. Grow up. Grow into adulthood. And be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You renew your mind by removing what never belonged and plugging it back into its original source. Now, that process, if you're lucky enough to really enter into it, can become so intense that you want to give up and just go back to the darkness. Forget it. In fact, sadly, for people who don't have tools, that's the reason for suicide. That's why people exit, as though they could escape what they're carrying around inside of them by exiting their bodies. You have the ability to remove from you what never belonged. And it's an intense process, because what's gone in there in the generations is intense insanity. There's a wonderful book in the scriptures about the healing process. Read the whole thing through. It's pretty interesting. It's the book of Job. And in essence, what that story is about is Job in his healing process. And at one point, and you get some sense of how intense it becomes by the intermission that Job asks for. And Job says, God, just give me time to swallow my saliva. Now, fortunately, once you put your hand to the plow, there's crazy glue on the handle. You can't let go. You can't pretend you don't know anymore. But once you put your hand to the plow and open that higher level of energy and movement in you, there's no way out but up. You've got to go through that, and it's going to be a continuous progression of forgiveness for years in your life. It's not going to be over in a day, a week, a month, a year, or 10 years. I promise you. I say that from experience. And when you recognize that you're dealing with your whole family's history of insanity, you'll notice that you make a new choice But when the stress is up and the chips are down, that choice is meaningless. You have no control over your genetics when they are activated into activity by a situation in your life. You'll notice that the choice to be loving can be gone in a fraction of a second, and you're back to your sharp tongue, you're back to your depressed pain state, and you're right back to the good old family feeling. Now just think about, contemplate for a moment what you know of your family system. Now I know for me, when I saw the movie The Streets of New York, it was my father's story of his childhood and the tough streets of the city in Scotland. And I got some sense of, oh my God, what did that man have to live through as a young boy? What, with a father in rage and alcohol, what did he have to live through? The person who through childhood doesn't know if they're going to eat tomorrow. What did they go through? What kind of poverty thoughts, poverty feelings, pain, trauma, terror, and fear do they go through? Oh, they put that behind them and they rise above it, we say. If you don't forgive it, you don't rise above that stuff. You can stand on top of it and keep tamping and stamping it down so it won't happen. But guess what happens? The next generation is condemned to experiencing it, and the next and the next and the next. That's why in the ancient Aramaic, where they understood genetics, they said the sins of the fathers will be passed, into 3 and 4 generations. That word sin is an archery term. It has to do with when you fire at the target and you miss the bullseye, the scorekeeper yells sin. You're off the mark. That's all the word means. It is not your identity. You are not one of those. But are there energies that are off the mark? Yeah. If your family bloodline includes what virtually everybody on the globe right now has in it. What kind of, if your issue is poverty, what kind of poverty was there in your family system when you go back and look at mom and dad and what you know about them? You go back and you look at grandma and grandpa on each side and what you know about them, and your great-grandparents and your great-great-grandparents. If your issue is one of death and loss, what do you suppose happened? Now, I was working with someone earlier today, and they had a son who'd been in a severe accident, and the terror and trauma of the loss of his life. And then the terror of the trauma that he lived through, he survived, but the terror and the trauma that he plays out and deals with on a daily basis. But most of us play the game of denial, and we dissociate from that. So now we have about 5% of our mental resources, if we're lucky, available. The other 95% is totally unconscious. And that's what's running under the system, under the surface, That's what's running the dynamic of our lives. That becomes the creative process. Until the space becomes safe enough and the support becomes powerful enough to open that up, that stuff doesn't open. Now, think back to, what you know of your family system and what they went through, and then take it back. Let's just do a quantum leap back. Let's go back to the Dark Ages. Religious families, for instance. Do you know how many million people have been murdered for just having a Bible in their home and wanting to read it? You look at the darkness of, these people who are told that if they'll just go crusade, they'll go kill people, then they'll get to go to heaven for it. And you look at who in your bloodline, in my bloodline, where was our bloodline in that conflict? Were we the ones doing the killing? Were we the ones who bought the story that if we go to Mecca and we kill, then we get to go to heaven if we die in battle? Were we the ones who bought that story and went off with a sword and slaughtered people by the hundreds? Were we the person who was trying to convince others to go off and do battle and kill? Or were we on the receiving end of the sword, sitting quietly in our Middle Eastern homes when these rageful, vicious, ravaging so-called crusaders came through. And as we sat and had dinner, one of them came in and lopped off the head of mother and father in front of the child. What's in our genetics, folks? What's in there? That's the kind of stuff that's there. And each generation of children that comes in, until that is resolved, gets converted out of their human beingness into knowing that that's what's waiting for them. That's what's real. We're looking to create a generation of mentors who hold the space and move through those things, forgiving them, that is, removing from physiology the very capacity to carry those energies anymore. Forgiveness in Aramaic is the delete key. It's how you remove those things. How many were ever told that forgiveness is a tool for removing content from your genetics, from your body, from your mind? If you're capable of some form of hostility or fear, look back in your bloodline. You came by it honestly. And then somebody, of course, came along and added insult to injury and told you how you were so terrible and you were so sinful and you deserved hell because you had those things in you and you lived out of those behaviors, and just reinforced the whole game. It's like, boy, talk about custom-made for insanity. We're looking to shift that dynamic. We're looking to create such a support place on the planet that each of us is able to open those ancient dynamics in ourselves. There's a wonderful line in the Course in Miracles that says, there is no place so holy upon the earth as the place where an ancient hatred becomes a present love. We're here to support you being a present love for everything that your physiology can produce and healing it. So let's check in with Jeanie and see if she's rectified whatever's going on with her phone system. Are you with us, Jeanie? I guess not. And if there's anybody that Jeanie has clicked in, if you put your hand up with a question, go ahead and give us your question. Is anybody with us?
Hey, I am on, but it's crazy. I had texted Carol and asked her if she could do the switchboard, and she was in a meeting, though, so she didn't get on there in time. But I either have Wi-Fi connection or I have cell phone connection, so I can either look at the switchboard or I can talk to you. I can't do both. And so, but there was one call on there on the switchboard, but they dropped. So other than that, Dr. Tim and you and I are the only ones out here with their hands up. I'll have to switch back over to see if anybody else pops in there. But so that's
okay, sweetie.
what's
Well, welcome.
happening.
Do you have any thoughts or comments on the conversation so far?
Well, it just sounds like what we processed this morning and everything. So now I'm just still breathing.
Awesome. It is the key to it all.
Yeah. And it does get intense enough that it's like wanting to quit.
Yeah, I got an email from someone this morning that I actually forwarded to you, Jeanie, and I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. We want to hold the space for these folks, and this young man who's fathered a child, and you want to put your phone on mute, Jeanie?
Sure.
A lot of noise in the background there. Better. Okay. So maybe until you're ready to talk again, if you want to just leave it on mute. But this young man goes back and describes how, as a child from a wealthy home, his parents divorce, rageful, struggling, fighting over money. In his mind, and I've spoken to his mother about it, and she's like, well, that never happened. But in his mind, he was programmed to hate his father, and at one point recounts in this letter, remembering being 11 years of age and wanting to murder his father because of what he had done to his mother, and then going through severe physical trauma of an accident, having fathered a child, being at the birth of the child, and the birth being traumatic in the extreme, where the mother and the child almost die. The child is taken with forceps, is all bruised and battered and beaten. The trauma and terror of this young man, and the kind of things that go on in our culture, and that what we're looking to do is to spawn a generation of mentors who are able to hold the space, elders who actually understand the process and are able, because they've done their own work. You don't get to do this by understanding it all in your head. You can have the whole story in your head, and that'll be interesting, but it won't move you one iota out of your pain. It's the stepping in and doing the work, the facing of those things in you, that empowers you to be that space that supports others being able to open those parts of their minds and to move through them, to heal, and to be reconverted, to be converted back to the love-based creatures that we're designed to be. And so that's what we're here to support you in, and our call-in number, I think Jeanie can get calls, if I understood correctly, 646-200-4169. If we were sitting face-to-face right now having this conversation and everything that I've shared with you, everything that Dr. Tim has shared with you, would you have a question for us? Question for Dr. Tim? Question for me? Call in, ask your question. Dr. Tim, share some of your thoughts about the whole conversation. Some intense stuff coming up today.
Well, it is very intense. It puts me in mind of I've been honored to asked to do the talk at Unity this coming Sunday in Woodstock, and the title of the talk is How Lessons Ride In on the Back of Events, or how to make the most of whatever happens in your life. And all of these events, the illnesses in family, the horrible traumas that we inflict on each other, the lost jobs and lost relationships that we don't want at any time, they stir up in us the very thing that we need to become aware of, that prior to this event, we didn't know we had this anger, this fear, this sadness, this confusion within us. And if one has instruction in how the system works, and one has the tools for dismantling those realities and energy structures within oneself, on the other side of all of these traumas and events that we didn't want, our life can be more than we ever imagined.
Absolutely.
And, I think of the time I heard you say that if you ask people to think about the worst things that ever happened in their life and pick one that was 5 years or more in the past, and then try to figure out if you can see how that led either directly or indirectly to some of the best things in their life today, every time people can see how the things they didn't want that were 5 years or more in the past have led to some of the best things in their life today. And when I heard that, it just kind of screamed in my head, I don't want to wait 5 years. So ever since I heard you give that lecture, I've been trying to do the practice every day of watching for any upset within myself, and as soon as I realize I'm angry or hurt or scared or confused about what's happening, I call a timeout, I take some deep breaths, and I start asking the series of questions. How is this going to work out for the best? How is this going to turn into a blessing? I wonder how this contains a lesson I need to learn to move forward in my life. And I just gently keep breathing and asking those questions, and this practice has transformed my life more than I can tell you. What two things I can tell you to point you towards how much it's transformed my life are, I spend so much less time in anger, fear, sadness, and confusion. It isn't even funny. I don't even feel like I'm the same person since starting this practice and strengthening it. And the second thing is, I have seen more little miracles, little coincidences, little blessings that were probably always there, but I couldn't see them when I was busy raging and protesting against the events that showed up that weren't according to my plan. I mean, I had a plan for how I wanted this day to go, and having a fender bender wasn't part of it. Or I had a plan for how I wanted this day to go, and dropping my laptop and breaking it wasn't part of it. And if I find myself in anger or fear or hurt about those events, and I can catch myself and call a timeout and do some breathing and ask a series of questions, gently looking for, I wonder how this is going to turn out for the best. I wonder how this is a blessing. I wonder how this contains a lesson I need to learn to move forward in my life. It transforms the moment, and it rescues the day, and I highly recommend it as a daily practice.
Absolutely. I'm in full agreement there. And, one of the things about this, the mind that's been converted from a love-based mind to a hostility and fear-based mind, is a hostility and fear-based mind thinks that the event that happened caused the hostility and the fear, and has got it absolutely backward. The hostility and the fear are the cause of the events. The events are not the cause of the hostility and the fear. The way they said that in the ancient Aramaic was they said, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. Take care what you deny and dissociate. If you, have lived your life with all kinds of pain and terror and trauma and abuse and, financial difficulties, et cetera, and you've not looked at those things and exposed them to love and processed through them, then those things are dissociated. They're in what in the ancient Aramaic was called the heart. They're in the dissociated mind. And when they said take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life, so now all those dissociated pains and traumas become cause of the next experience. Why did my fingers fumble and I dropped my laptop? Because I had my attention on some old hostility, rage, or fear. Why cancel the thought about the laptop? Why was I in the middle of the road when the Mack truck came through? Cancel that thought. Because I had some form of hostility or fear that prevented me from listening in my deepest mind to the warning there was a Mack truck coming down the road. So the next time you're tempted to think that this event makes me or this person makes me, reverse your language. What in me has made this event? What in me has invited this person in to function this way? And then use that as the opportunity to learn forgiveness and to process through those energies so that you get to reconvert. What's reconvert? Move back to a love-based mind. Now, that's going to be at the root of your creative process. And if something else shows up in your external world, Yeshua used the word fruit to denote the external world. And they said to him, well, how do you tell what's going on in somebody's life? He said, you look at their fruit. How do you tell what's going on in somebody's heart or their unconscious? You look at the results they're producing. If they're producing terror and traumatic results in their relationships, the relationship doesn't cause the terror and trauma. The terror and trauma causes the relationship to break. And so when you choose to function out of a love-based mind and take responsibility, that doesn't mean you're to blame for what other people do. It just means there's a part of you that pulls them in, that pulls that energy out of them so that you get to replicate what's in that structure. The Creator does not want you having hostility, fear, pain, or trauma in His temple because it destroys the temple. And your temple was not made for destruction. Your physiology was meant to be a place to embody the active presence of love and to reflect that into the world. That's just as simple as it is. But if you put something other than love into that temple, the purpose of life changes. Instead of the purpose of life being, the old story of the Garden of Eden, aliveness, joy, creativity, abundance, everything you need, the purpose of life is to kick you in the limitation. If you hold an energy in you that does not belong in the temple of love, life is going to bring some event forward. That held in your temple, in your generations, in your genetics, will bring forward an event. When the event comes forward, you have two choices. You can rail and rave about the event and be in trauma and pain about it and how it's doing and why did they doing this to me? Or you can go, what in me has set this up? Gee, I'm feeling rage about this. I think I'll begin to forgive my rage. Now, if I start doing worksheets on my rage and I look back at how much rage has gone on in my generations, how many worksheets do you suppose I'm going to have to do to delete my rage? You know, when they asked Yeshua that question, he said 77 times 70, which means an infinite number of times till you're complete. Thank God there's crazy glue on the handle of the plow. Once you start to understand this, it starts to open. You can't go back. And going forward is not always an easy process. It's not always Dr. Feelgood. That's why we're here 5 days a week. That's why we're committed to supporting you. That's why we want to hear your voice, your questions, your concerns, your refined understanding of this work, and your questions that will help us all to refine our understanding of this work. The key tool, put the pen to the paper. These dissociated dynamics do not change without doing your work. Knowing about the fact that this can be done, and $5, if you're lucky, gets you a cup of coffee these days. It's the putting of the pen to the paper and doing the work. www.whyagain.com, right-hand side, download worksheets. That's where you get the worksheet. And you start doing it. You put the pen to the paper every day, and you do it. And that way you change those dynamics. Soon it will be www.whyagain.org. And the forgiveness, the worksheet processes, will be up at the top of the page. That's new, coming online soon. So check it out. The new site is up and operating. It's not fully functional, so there'll be links that don't work and such, but take a look at it. It's very cool. And we're actually a couple hours from now, I'll be welcoming the folks who are sort of spearheading the redoing of the website. Daniel and Susan are on their way, actually, to join us at Heartland for the next 10 days. And so they're stopping in Birmingham to spend the night. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to add, before we get too far from the topic, the statement, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life, or issues of life. That word issues has these multiple meanings, and one that really resonates with me when I hear that statement and you talk about it is that we think in terms of, I have this issue. I have an issue with my partner. You know, I have anger about this, that my partner has cheated me out of something, or so there's my issue. But another meaning of the word is to give forth or to assign. So a traffic officer can issue a citation or a ticket. So take care of the heart, because it issues, it gives you, it creates, life hands you and issues you what you are going to be dealing with based on what you hold. And
right.
it's not just that my issues are contained within me. It's that what I contain within me causes life to issue me what's needed to stir up what I need to resolve. It's like I'm going to get issued a citation for needing to be tested in my anger if I hold on to feelings of anger and resentment.
Right. And the word issue also means offspring. So when a woman has a baby, that baby is the issue.
Yes, her issue.
She brings forward that's what her offspring is, the issue of her body. It is what she brings forward into the world. And so when you start looking, and that just it's a great way to tap into and look at that word. So when I say I have an issue, as you say, oftentimes it's like, well, I got this thing going on, but no, that's what I've given birth to. And what I give birth to comes from what's in me. It doesn't come from the world. And if you have anything in your genetics that's in the process of killing you, any form of hostility or fear, the blessing you're going to get. You go back to Yeshua when he talks about our Father, not his Father, but the Creator. He says, before you even ask, the Creator gives you what you need. Guess what? What you need is here right now. Now, if you rail against it and you don't trust the Creator, no, the Creator goofed when he gave me this experience. No, this one doesn't, no. Well, then you're going to struggle, strain, and you're going to create yourself more pain and trauma when you soften and open and say, why has this come forward? As you say, Dr. Jim, that practice you do is awesome. What's the higher level of this? What fun it is to do your work.
What rewards it holds.
So far beyond anything the world has ever conceived of.
Yeah, I often tell people I can't imagine going through the events of the last 15 years of my life without having access to these tools. I can't imagine what further pain, consternation, and devastation I would have left in my wake if I hadn't had these tools. So
it's unfathomable how even people without the tools even survive. It's just like unfathomable how they deal with it. It's like, oh my God, it's so miraculous to think that people do survive these things. And man, what they go on, the havoc they go on to wreak in their worlds and in their bodies, and then they wonder why they have disease processes going on. Your physiology was not made for disease, pain, or suffering. It was made to be plugged into the active presence of love. That's all. That's the simple truth of it. That's the whole Garden of Eden story. We're the ones who pooped in the garden and messed it up. And we're the ones who have to clean it up if it's going to be cleaned up. You know, you take around and you look around at the world and the horrendous atrocities that are done by these non-human minds where there's no human life. Those who've been converted to hostility and fear-based creatures can do any form of atrocity that's structured in their minds. So we're here to support you making a shift. Our number is 646-200-4169. We do have, about 2 minutes left. And so probably a little late to take a caller. Jeanie, do you have anything else to share with us, sweetie? I guess not. She's probably then on the, I think she's using her phone to tether. That's why the challenge. So we're down to about less than a minute. If you're in Birmingham, Alabama, come join us. We've got 3 more nights of workshops, and then Saturday, MindShifters and Still Point Breathing. If you're out in Woodstock, you're doing the service on Sunday in Woodstock, Tim?
Yes, at the Unity Spiritual Center in Woodstock, Sunday morning, the 15th of July, 2012, at 10 a.m. It's at 225 West Calhoun in Woodstock, Illinois.
Cool. And do you have a workshop happening afterward, just the service you're doing?
No, it's just a talk for the
cool.
Reverend Tom is out of town for his yearly family vacation and asked me to stand in.
Cool. Well, for those who are up in the Chicago area, and then, of course, on Thursday we start Food, Fun, Forgiveness, and Work Project at Heartland. If you're interested in 10 days of just some awesome food, go back through a couple of the archive shows over the last couple of weeks, listen to Ari, and you will be hungry and you will want to be there for what he's going to be doing with the food. And for those who are ready to take their work to the next level, we'll be doing evening workshops. We'll be doing work projects on. That's an economy program. And then we'll go into a 9-day Y intensive and a 9-day teacher training. So take a look at whyagain.com and check it out. And we appreciate you. Have the best year yet of your eternal life. Bring a stranger to the show tomorrow. Bye-bye.